Okay, Dave, you'll see that statement gets out to the press in the morning then?
Yes, I'll get everything mimeographed before we get on the plane.
Right, and I'd like so people get carbon copies.
Fine.
Hey, quiet, let's get with it, huh? I think the next thing, really the main item of business, is what's going to happen in Washington. Tom, how do we stand on that?
Well,
How about
yes,
that?
I'd like to.
Yes, Tony.
I'd like to ask something. I'm wondering about all these press conferences that are planned.
Yeah.
I feel a little awkward about them, and I'd like to explain why. The way I feel about the civil rights legislation and about this march, I feel as a private citizen, and I somehow feel that we do ourselves a disservice by somehow trying to band this together, getting the press to cover it. I just somehow think that some people may misinterpret this as a means for some actors or for some people to want to get publicity, and I do think it's a very important point and something we ought to examine quite carefully, because I don't want our participation in this march to hurt it.
Yeah, well, to go along with what Tony says, we're like sitting ducks. Everything that an actor does, people look at it that they do it for publicity because they're kind of conditioned to it. And I don't think that what we should do is make an effort to show that participation in the march is for in support of civil rights legislation. And in other words, we're not doing it as actors.
I think that's the main point. Certainly, it's right to be concerned about these things, but everything an actor does, he does in the public eye. If you have a public identity, you can't abdicate it. When you take a private action, you get married, you go to Europe, you go to the movies, you go to a premiere, and people take pictures of you. Obviously, if you take a political stand like this, you do that in the public eye too. But we're not. I think the main point is we're not doing it as public individuals. We're expressing the citizens' rights to peaceable assembly. It's in the Constitution. And I think as long as we concentrate on that and not seem to seek publicity, that it's a perfectly legitimate position.
Well, what I mean is just, to make it realize that we're not seeking publicity.
Well, I think we all feel that way, and as long as any statement we make to the press is in those terms, I don't see how
Yes.
I don't question your wondering about it, Tony, but I think it's a good thing to get out.
I think at this particular point, I think the sincerity of our beliefs, should alleviate a lot of thinking in the country, if we want to put it on that basis of that we're seeking publicity. I think it's terribly important that we are going there as private citizens. But above and beyond that, we can't deny the fact that some of us are prominent personalities in the film industry, and that whatever action some of us may take, it will receive a great deal of attention in the press and on television and on radio. And I think that is terribly important. That is a role that we can't deny ourselves, because of the fact that we do have a large influence to play in terms of, well, for example, to put it on a very personal level, I, for a very long time, was very aware of the problems, the civil rights problems, but in a strange kind of way, I subconsciously put them back in my mind. I felt, well, it is a problem that exists, but there's really nothing I can do, and just don't ruffle the waters, let the status quo remain, and everything will be fine.
Don't make waves.
Don't make waves, exactly. And then one evening, I had the opportunity to listen to a very eloquent speaker by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King, and just by the very force of his eloquence, and by the sincerity of the things that he said, and by the truth of the things that he said, I suddenly realized, sitting there listening to him, that I had to get involved in this. Just purely as a human being, I had to. And from that point on, did I realize my responsibility in this movement. And it's the burning issue of our time. And I can't sit back. I have to get involved. And if I may take another minute, Mr. Chairman, I felt that if the influence I play as a private citizen and as a personality can have influence on someone's mind in terms of, I put it in the twilight zone as I was. There are people that are involved who did and are doing exactly the same thing I did. And I feel that if anybody is interested in what we do in terms of a movement in this country, if they become aware of it, then we are playing a role beyond the fact of the pure citizen role. And I think they become aware of it, and by being aware, they'll do something about it. And I think it's terribly important on that level. And if people are going to say that we're seeking publicity, then we're seeking publicity. But the fact is,
your value.
yes, but the fact is that it goes, it's just, it's no reason not to do what you really believe, and I think that's essential.
I think it's a good point.
Considered as people who are capable of having serious thought, and I think that it doesn't matter. People are interested in actors like they're interested in horse racing or auto accidents or fires, or they rush to actors like people rush to the back fence to know what the husband next door almost did to the maid while the lady of the house was on vacation. And it really doesn't matter. Actors have always been shills and clacks, and maybe it's a cynical attitude, but the fact is, if the American public spends billions of dollars on trash that they read in the national magazines, the national publications, and if they're capable of being interested in that trash, for whatever reason it is, they are interested enough to pause in their daily occupations and think, well, what are all these people doing here? What is the nature of their being here? Whatever it is, you've seen these things in the, what do they call it, the used car motor lots where they have propellers and things to attract your attention. Whatever the attraction is, maybe it's a cynical remark to make, but the fact is that it will make people pause long enough to consider whether it is right or wrong that a Negro should vote, that he should have a decent place to live, that he should be able to send his kids to a good hospital, get their teeth fixed, and have a decent job. That's, if we serve that much of a function, then I think that we've served it well. I don't think it matters beyond that, and let the rest lay where it will.
Okay.
Well, then let's. How soon can we do it?
Let Jim sit there and you sip coffee. I'll get out.
Can I sit up?
No, good. No, that's fine. We're all set.
So you know what you're supposed to do.
Come on.
But here's a mic, and nobody's here to talk into it. No, we're not going to speak.
He's not here?
Just a little bit.
Am I all right?
Yeah.
Blake, can hit me right?
Your time.
This is it.
Blake, did you say you want me to walk
We
in?
want to, baby. We're gonna make it.
Go ahead, just everybody talk.
Yeah.
Anything, talk.
All right, they're going. Tom,
Yeah.
where were we when we were rudely interrupted?
Well, I think we had brought everybody up to date on all of the changes,
Yeah, we were brought up to date.
so that we
We
start.
brought up to date on the changes that.
If everybody has
You have
coffee, let's,
Yeah, the changes that I have here.
let's get going.
I don't.
The first thing on this meeting is this statement for the press. Because we agreed the other night that we were going to give them one. And this seems to be as close to a joint statement as we've come to yet. We will march in Washington on August 28th, 1963, along with hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans who believe in equal opportunity and freedom for us all. We will march as citizens because we wish actively to express our support for the civil rights legislation now before the Congress and to urge its passage. We will march because we recognize the events of the summer of 1963 as among the most significant we have lived through, and we wish to be a part of these events and of this time.
Cut this radio sound problem with you there.
And equal opportunity and freedom.
It's on your head, right? What's that on my head?
Let's start again.
Okay.
We're going to take here.
Yeah.
Quiet, please.
Assistant Director. I told you about that accident.
And your finger.
By the way, Miss Joe Mack, Alice Joe Mack, which is number 8, James Boyd.
I'm thrilled to death you told me that. Why?
Sam wants to come to Washington.
Set up a crowd.
Yeah, if you call him. He'd like to hear from somebody. He doesn't want to be begged, but he would like to hear from somebody. And I thought since he...
Cook, another Catherine
Push
the gas pedal, is that
I think Joe Mack would like to be the actor.
Listen, if everybody has coffee, let's get started. Jim? I think the first thing to get settled is this statement for the press, because it's about time we told them something.
Right.
And this seems to be as close to a joint feeling about this thing as we've arrived at yet. See what you think of it. We will march in Washington on August 28th, 1963, along with hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans who believe in equal opportunity and freedom for us all. We will march as citizens because we wish actively to express our support for the civil rights legislation now before the Congress and to urge its passage. We will march because we recognize the events of the summer of 1963 as among the most significant we have lived through, and we wish to be a part of these events and to make of this time when promises we made to ourselves a century ago will finally be kept. We've formed a committee to encourage others to march with us, composed of Marlon Brando, Peter Brown, Tony Curtis, Mel Ferrer, Tony Franciosa, Virgil Fry, Jim Garner, Charlton Heston, Burt Lancaster, Billy Wilder, so on and so on. Now, if anybody has any questions about that, this is the time for them. If everybody thinks it's a good statement, let's say so, and we can get it to the press in the morning.
I move we adopt it.
I second the motion.
How about any other? Everybody in favor?
That's the way to do it. All right.
That's the way to do it. Any nays? Unanimously passed. Okay. Cut. Now we move the mic down.
Because it is suddenly a
Thank you,
to me,
Mr.
and I
Director,
thought,
sir.
no, the better part of Congress did not look at Mr.
He checked to see where everyone was looking, and he looked the other way, that's all.
How's that? Ready?
Oh, Christ.
You can pick me up sitting down and we go, huh?
Right.
It's a hard thing to do. Picking up.
Say when.
Do you want me to give the information about the departure time as well?
Sure, I think everybody wants to know. We got some people here tonight for the first time.
Good. The plane will leave from the Burbank Airport, that's the Lockheed Terminal, at midnight, and we will arrive in Washington at 9 a.m. in the morning. When we arrive at 9 a.m., there will be a press conference with our group as well as the people coming in from New York. The press conference will be held at the airport in facilities that are being set up for us there. We will go from the airport, depending on what time the press conference concludes, to the Washington Monument, where we will engage, or the first part of the meeting will take place. At this point, there will be a brief program. It will last until, possibly close to 12. At 12, we will then march from there to the Lincoln Memorial. And we expect to arrive at the Lincoln Memorial for about 2 p.m., at which time we'll have another brief program. Now, there will be some of us taking part in the program, but basically that's the information. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, Tony, I've been asked a number of times by people, perhaps too many, why I, as a performer, want to be involved in demonstrations and so forth. And the answer really, I think, is quite simple. There is no other one. And that is that I consider my human role in life much more important than my life or my role as a performer. I think that's uppermost. And I reject the idea that someone wants to take my right away to express my views in any way which I deem expeditious and wise, simply because I'm a performer.
I think nobody can challenge the moral position of an actor moving in this area. I think as long as we go to Washington, not only aware of our rights as citizens, but of our responsibilities as citizens, I think that it's going to work.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
This is the way.
You did, because, Jim, this is something we had to
No,
talk
it gave
about.
everybody a chance to clear the air on it, and we should have a kind of a group feeling on it. Incidentally, speaking of going to Washington, I think we should have the late bulletin on who's actually going to get on the airplane. Judy, what have you got?
Do you have a list?
Would you like me to read the list?
Why not?
Charlton Heston, Tony Franciosa, Marlon Brando. Give you good grilling. Yes.
Who wrote that
up? Tony Curtis, Billy Wilder, Burt Lancaster, both of whom, incidentally, Billy Wilder and Burt Lancaster are both flying from Paris on that day to be there.
Who is?
Billy Wilder and Burt Lancaster. Dean Martin, Peter Brown, Virgil Fry, David Susskind.
I'm not going. I draw the line.
Steve McQueen, Gene
Not
Kelly.
only not going, he's going to bomb the plane.
Then the Italian film industry will experience a new renaissance.
Steve McQueen, Gene Kelly, Jack Parr, Doug McClure, George Jessel, Judy Garland, Harry and Julie Belafonte.
Excuse me, I think that's a mistake.
What's
Jack
a
Parr
mistake?
says he's going.
Yes.
Is that a letter from Jack Parr?
No, he's changing his mind. He told Arthur Canton he would like to go if people didn't think he'd be too controversial.
It's up to him not to be
I got to tear up an 8-page letter.
Check it.
That's a lot of work.
Let's have the rest
Good
of the
for Jack. Okay.
Judy?
Edward Lewis, Sidney Poitier, Diane Carroll, Lena Horne, Nat Cole, Joanne Woodward, Paul Newman, Sammy Davis Jr., Ossie Davis, Ruby Dee, Lorraine Hansberry, Rita Moreno, Dick Gregory, Blake Edwards, James Garner, Eartha Kitt, John Houseman, Alan King, Pearl Bailey, Eugene Franke, Kirk Douglas, Sam Peckinpah, Ina Balin, John Frankenheimer, Susan Strasberg, Jackie Robinson, and Marge and Gower Champion.
We can make a series.
What about Gene Kelly?
I said Gene Kelly.
You weren't listening.
See?
You were joking about Tony's problem on the plane.
Okay,
Be slightly
I think that's a
overloaded.
pretty good representation from
we'll never get off the ground.
We were talking about other things to get away from it. Other than a march to Washington, we've had a few, requests to do radio, television. And I think it's pretty important because if some way we can use our influence to get to the people of the United States and wherever through the medium of radio, television, newspapers, whatever, to impress on them to write to their congressmen, to their senators, to give their views and their feelings in support of the civil rights legislation that is up before the Congress. And I think that we should, make an effort to do this because I know...
Because this is the time.
Yeah, this is it, and I feel that people don't do it because they say, well, what's my little note, what's my little letter, who reads it? From what I found out, they read them, and just to think, I know there are millions of people who think to themselves, if these same million people did write, it would be such a fantastic result to the senators, the congressmen, the feeling and the temperature of the people of the United States now, and I think we must impress this on the
Marlon made a point about that the other night. What was the bit about? This is the time for this.
Somebody made a remark, I can't remember who it was, but it was some historian that said the march of great armies is not so strong is an idea whose time has come.
That's it, yeah. And this is the time, this summer is the time for
Well, I need some bodies for Cleveland now, for Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, let's hope. Who wants to go to
Rita.
Cleveland?
I can't.
Well, I'm sure we can get
Get somebody.
Yes.
But I need somebody for
Monday, Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday. I need somebody for Cleveland.
We gotta work it out. We got,
I think
there's a
these
lot of
things
people
are
there.
very important. I think the people should know.
Chuck,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be a good idea? I mean, the march is fine, but it's just part of it. Wouldn't it be a good idea to have a kind of a permanent stable of stars who would be available, that all the groups could
I
contact?
don't like the idea of...
Me too.
I was in a television stable once.
A pool.
A pool, yeah.
Yeah.
A pool of talent, so that...
Local and
Stuart, along that line, there are those occasions when it is important that we have the participation of personalities, because it tends, first of all, it has to be that kind of an occasion. And I certainly feel that it would be important if we had personalities who said, whenever you have something that it warrants my participation in, let me know,
Well,
and I'll be glad.
Dave Golding apparently has such a situation in Cleveland. Obviously, we got to get on the phone tomorrow and go down the whole list. We've
Wait a
only
minute,
a
I want to
third.
ask something.
I have one in New York.
That list seems incomplete. I mean, there are a lot of people who are going to be on the plane who you haven't read off
Well,
yet.
the only thing we were reading actually tonight was the people who
That had already paid their money
Who already
for their
paid
tickets.
their money.
What do you mean, up to tonight?
Yeah.
Because I talked to a lot, I have a
No,
list at home.
there's a large list, Marlon, of people who have said that they, in all probability, are coming, people who are trying to arrange schedules to come, but didn't want to commit themselves at this moment to this list until they're sure, absolutely, but have offered their services in many, many other areas along the lines that you're talking about, Jim.
And we have
Certainly, Greg
we have
Peck, I got a telegram from Gregory Peck saying that he wanted to come and that he supported the whole movement, but that he couldn't.
He's shooting, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's shooting
he
at
intended to come, but he couldn't, along with Fred Zimmerman.
And we have a check here from Stanley Kramer. He says he can't go, but he sent his money, which is important.
Well, we'll take his money. Yeah, his money can go.
Yes, I think I should be in part of
Did you read
Wait a minute, Eugene Frankie is saying to do something.
He's got money.
Johnny!
I wouldn't trust you.
Well,
I wouldn't trust me. Anything but
Never trust an actor with money, Gene.
Good.
I want a receipt.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We'll give you.
Because I give you cash there also.
Yeah, the total of the cash here is
Not
2,000.
cash, it included the checks.
The checks.
Yeah.
$2,769.
Signature, please.
Where do you think work out?
Signature?
Yes, sir.
Oh, on this.
On
All
this,
right.
sir.
Okay.
Should I give this to Tony to total and be sure that the adding?
All right, gang. Do we have any more big items to come up with?
Tony wants to sell his Maserati.
Tony, is it true you want to contribute your Maserati to the march?
Yes.
Fine, I think that's very...
I'd love to drive that car down
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
I think it might kind of
I don't
pass
like the
the wrong
expression you
image.
used before about stable, so we do, but I do think we ought to get a committee together, and if there's anything I can do, or anything an actor can do, in terms of his profession, doing TV shows, or making it known that there's going to be a march, what civil rights stands for, whatever, something that Blake can come up with, or someone of our writing guild.
You know, Tony, it doesn't end with the march.
No, exactly, that's my point.
By the way, we have
in Washington.
as many people.
Yeah.
Everybody jumps up.
I joined you. I even put it into definite words.
I tell you what, Tony, I've got an idea. If we fix it at this tape, after Marlon finishes...
I wish I had never read that.
That's my
Oh, boy.
I got hung up on what that was saying.
Okay, guys.
I know the answer.
Ready?
Talking about the average
Blake? Forgotten what my line.
No, you weren't puzzled.
You were looking at Rita. Okay, we're ready? Go. Fire.
Well, the farmer's daughter was doing what?
We rolling?
We're rolling.
Go.
Thanks for the coffee. I hate iced coffee.
Well, look, the point is, anything an actor does, if you have a public identity, you can't abdicate it. If you go to the movies, they take pictures of you. If you get married or go to Europe, obviously, if you go to Washington to support legislation you're in favor of, they're going to take pictures of that too. If people accuse you of doing it for publicity reasons, you have to prove by the way you go about it that you're not doing it for that. We're not going as stars. We're going as private citizens, exercising our rights as citizens to peaceable assembly. It's in the Constitution. I don't see what we're, we've been dealing with this publicity problem all our careers. What are we suddenly so shy about it for?
I don't think it's a question of shyness so much. I think that perhaps it's a little cynical to say, but actors are not considered to be people who have are capable of, we'll have to do a different take.
Those lipstick.
Cut the close-up, silent close-up, and go back there.
We can go right on.
We just cut the.
Got some powder, please.
Because I was okay. I'll print mine. Do a pickup on that.
Actually, it was so bad that it threw me. What you said was completely inappropriate.
So what are we suddenly so shy for?
I don't think it's a question of shyness. I think that actors are regarded generally as people who are nincompoops and people that aren't capable of having a... No, seriously.
You speak for yourself, Marlon.
I don't know.